question about the process that you had for one of the other panelists, maybe? No. Okay. But you could become a doctor, and then you can deliver all the babies you want. It's a messy job. It's a messy job.
All right, let's lots of other hands. I'm going to try to call where I have some hands before. I'll get you Monica and Jared again. Kaylin, I haven't heard from you yet. Kaylin, you have a question?
So, I know how you're saying like when the baby is born, their lungs not fully covered, but can they get a disease in their lungs?
Absolutely. Or their lungs. Oh, yeah. Because their lungs aren't fully developed. For instance, like they could in their immune system. The issue is the immune system. So your immune system is like you could consider your immune system as like a guard. It guards you from foreign things, and foreign things being bacteria, viruses, and that kind of thing. So when a baby is born, they don't have the same strong guard that we would have as teens and grown-ups. They don't have the protection that they will have as they grow. So because they're newborn, their immune systems aren't as strong. And so some things that when babies get a disease because they couldn't fight it off, a lot of times if it's not treated, it could be fatal because the bacteria or virus could overtake their system. They're small, they aren't fighting. Their body isn't fighting against the bacteria or virus, and so it could really end in the baby dying.
And a lot of babies die from infections. It happens a lot.
Say for the parent, like the mother who's pregnant, she got AIDS or something. Do that mean the baby come out? Is she or he gonna have AIDS?
They have very high-tech medication that they can give a pregnant woman who has HIV to protect her baby from actually contracting the virus. But the key is being in the care of a physician who can give you that medication. It's not 100%, but it has drastically reduced the number of babies who are born to mothers with HIV. It has decreased their risk of actually having the virus.
What I'd like you guys to think about, though, is I think these questions are important. The other thing I'd like you to think about is, okay, how do we prevent the mom from getting AIDS in the first place? Because if the mom doesn't have AIDS, then the baby's not going to have, there's no chance that the baby's going to have AIDS. Okay, and so what is it, and this is a question for you guys, what is it that you can do on your shifts to make sure that there's no AIDS, there's no gonorrhea, there's no syphilis, there are no sexually transmitted diseases? What can you, no new cases. What can you do on your shifts to make sure that there are no new cases of AIDS, so you don't have to worry about it transferring from one generation to the next? Do you guys have answers?
What about
That too, but looking at this one thing, right? Like we know AIDS is sexually transmitted, and it's also transmitted through needles, right? If people are drug users, you can, and if the needle touches my blood and I have AIDS, somebody else uses that needle, and it touches their blood, then they can get AIDS, right? So with this one example, what is it that you can do in your environment on your ship to make sure people don't get this disease? Yes, safe sex. Yes, regular physical exams. Yeah, you can test people before they get on the ship. What's that? Artificial conception. Artificial conception. So that means people aren't having sex anymore? Yeah, I know about that. But yeah, but these are some of the things that you guys can think about, right? It's not just how do we treat this disease once it's already here, but you have a clean slate. Like how can you prevent these diseases in the first place? And it's better to think about these diseases one by one, because the strategies are going to be different. You're not going to say, oh, everybody needs to have safe sex so we can prevent heart disease. They're totally unrelated. You need separate strategies for each disease, okay? So think about how you can prevent diseases as well as treat them.
Okay, LaMonica.
I have a question for Sean while you're here. How many years do you need to take for monitoring epidemiology and microbiology?
All right, so the degree that Sean has is a master's degree. And so in order to get a master's degree, first you have to get a bachelor's degree. And so a bachelor's degree is going to take around 4 years, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. And then for the master's degree, it takes 2 years. So 2 years. And during the 2 years, you're taking classes, you're also working in a lab, you're getting different experiences to get that master's.
But with the bachelor's degree that I have is clinical laboratory science, we learn microbiology, chemistry, like it's very broad, and you get exposure to all of those types of sciences that you would encounter in the lab. So you could actually be a microbiologist with a bachelor's degree. So that's like a 4 or 5 year process.
Darius, this question?
How to treat type 1 diabetes and how to prevent it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically what happens with diabetes, do you guys know anything about diabetes? There are 2 types. All right, I need people to raise their hand if you have ideas about the origins of diabetes. That's right. There are different stages of diabetes. Anything else? Okay. So there's several different questions. So basically, diabetes is when you become insulin resistant, which means that your body cannot process all the sugar that you're consuming. So a lot of times people call diabetes sugar, right? I don't know. Do y'all call diabetes sugar? Yeah. And so that's why, right? Because your body can't really process all that sugar. And so what's happening is you asked how to prevent it. And so one way to prevent it is through a lot of physical activity. Another way to prevent it is by monitoring your nutrition, making sure you're not consuming too many sweets, too many fats, too many bad fats, too much salt, all that kind of stuff. Just keeping track of your nutrition. What are other? Also, if you have family members who have diabetes, you're at higher risk of getting diabetes.
So it's good to know your family history.
So it's good to ask people in your family, like, do you have diabetes? How do you manage it? How do you treat it? Diabetes does not have to be a terrible disease, but it can be if you don't treat it, okay? So people have to take insulin, and they also have to monitor their insulin all day, okay? And so it costs money, though, to get the strips to monitor your insulin every day, and it also costs money to get the drugs, to get the insulin to inject into your veins. And so these things cost a lot of money, but if you can stay on top of it and make sure your insulin isn't super volatile or always super high, then you can live with diabetes. I mean, my dad has diabetes and doesn't even take insulin anymore because he's managed it.
Please excuse this interruption. Could David Dennis please report to the main office immediately? David Dennis, please report to the main office immediately. Thank you.
And also old people get diabetes. That's just part of the aging process. And so there are lots of different reasons why people get diabetes, but diabetes does not have to be a terrible disease. You can monitor it through your lifestyle, through different choices that you're making every single day, and it can be very manageable.
And another thing that I would say about chronic diseases, which means like diseases that you have for a long time, or like infections and stuff like that, you want to prevent these things. Prevention is a lot cheaper, it's a lot easier than actually treating something after you get it. So prevention is the key. Like Amanda was saying before about like viruses, like STDs. You want to prevent that stuff. That way you don't even have to worry about it.
Sorry, 1 minute. Aaron, go ahead.
I wanted to know, how could you prevent airborne diseases?
That's a good question. Airborne disease, so we have a lot of sources of pollution, air pollution, like around. So one thing we could do is like regulate, through like policies that Amanda was talking about before. You could have regulations in place that limit the amount of pollution that's coming from cars. You could say no smoking at all on my ship because that's a source of air pollution. You could get air pollution a number of different ways, from oil producers,
Different kinds of factories,
yeah.
all that stuff.
So one of the things that you could do is like have like a filtration system that could reduce some of the potential sources of air pollution.
Please
But
excuse the
smoking
interruption.
is a
May I have all girls basketball players to report to the locker room immediately? All girls, please report to the locker room immediately.
So are y'all gonna allow cigarettes on your ships? Are there cigarettes on your ships?
I mean, look, some people like to smoke a cigarette when they stressing, so, I mean,
reduce the stress.
So maybe the question is, what are some ways that you, or this for you to think about, what are some ways that you can reduce your stress? Some healthy ways.
but some people, like, old people, they need, like, sometimes, they need weed, like, old people need weed to, I don't know, they just need.
Like medical,
like medical marijuana, yeah. So, I mean, wouldn't that be a must?
A must. There are different kinds of ways people cope. And I mean, you guys can even think about this. Like, what do you do when you're stressed? Like, when I was a teenager, I would just listen to music and zone out. And that's what I did when people were getting on my nerves. Or now, what I try to do, I don't do so well, is go work out, right? Go for a walk. Just clear your head. And so there's different ways to manage stress. Because some stress is just going to come no matter what. And then some stress is preventable, like, yeah.
And for the stuff that's going to come no matter what, it's up to you to figure out like healthy ways to cope with those sources of stress. Because you could have a stressor and it could be causing you so much turmoil that you adopt some kind of negative, some kind of coping mechanism that's negative, and then that'll cause you another problem. So then you got two problems that you got to cope with. So it's important to figure out how best to deal.
So thank you. We have it's 3 o'clock right now. We have about 5 minutes max. So if you have a burning question, we're gonna kind of do a rapid fire. So I'm gonna pick 3 people that have 3 final questions. So you feel like you have one that must be answered that's really important for not just your ship, but all the ships. And we'll have those 3 questions answered, and I'm going to limit our panelists to about 60 seconds for the answer to that question. So I see your hand, who I haven't seen before. Jared, I've seen your hand before. Anthony, I haven't seen yours before. Is there any other new hand?
The black shirt.
Sorry. Where's Javion? Okay. So Javion, did you raise your hand? Did you? Okay. So